Hello, and welcome to the unsleeping historian. The noise of the modern world, the constant hum of electricity, the rush of traffic, the endless stream of information. Let all of that begin to fade away now. It has no place here. Here, in this space we will create together. Time moves differently. I want you to find a comfortable position. Let your shoulders fall. Release the tension in your jaw, and allow your breathing to find its own slow, natural rhythm. There is nothing for you to do right now, nowhere to be, and no one to impress. Your only task is to listen, and to let the story carry you where it will. If your mind wanders, that's all right. If you drift into sleep, then our purpose is fulfilled. Tonight, we are traveling back, far back, to an empire that saw itself as the continuation of Rome itself, a civilization of gold, and silk, and faith. We are going to the Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call Byzantium, but we are not heading for the battlefield, nor the emperor's throne room just yet. Our journey begins somewhere much quieter, somewhere more deliberate, a place where the outside world was meant to disappear, and the only journey that mattered was the one within. We are going to a Byzantine a world built of stone, and silence, and candlelight, a world where life was stripped down to its barest essentials: work, prayer, and the quiet copying of ancient words. So let your mind settle. Imagine the air growing still and cool. Imagine the scent of beeswax, an old stone, and something ancient and holy, like incense that has settled into the very walls for 1,000 years. The gates are just ahead. Let us step through them together and begin our day. The first thing you would notice is the dark, a profound, deep, and velvet blackness, unlike anything in our modern world. It is the dark before the dawn, and it is cold. The stone walls of your cell seem to draw what little warmth there is from your body. You are lying not on a soft mattress, but on a simple straw pallet, perhaps laid over wooden planks. The blanket is coarse wool, thin, and offering little comfort. And then it comes. Not a bell, not a chime, but a sound that is both percussive and resonant. It is the sound of a monk. The one assigned this sacred duty is walking the perimeter of the monastery's courtyard, striking a long, flat plank of wood with a wooden mallet. The sound cuts through the silence. It is a stark, insistent, and holy rhythm. It is the heartbeat of the monastery, calling you from the fleeting world of dreams to the structured reality of God's work. There is no option to ignore it. There is no lingering in the warmth of your bed. The rule of the monastery, and it begins now, in the deepest part of the night. Imagine yourself rising. The floor is cold stone beneath your bare feet. Your limbs are stiff. You dress not in clothes of comfort, but in your simple, rough-spun tunic. In the corner of your cell, a single icon of Christ, or the Theotokos, Mother of God, hangs on the wall. In the flickering light of a single oil lamp you might have just lit, the gold leaf of the icon's halo seems to shimmer with a life of its own. You make the sign of the cross, your private prayer, a silent bridge to the communal worship that awaits. You open the heavy wooden door of your cell. The air outside is even colder. Other dark shapes, your brothers in faith, are emerging from their own cells, their forms barely distinguishable in the gloom. No one speaks. A vow of silence is often observed, especially during these holy hours. The only sounds are the soft shuffle of leather slippers on stone, the rustle of robes, and the distant, fading rhythm of the You are walking towards the heart of the monastery, the Catholicon, the main church. It is the largest building, its dome a duck shape against a sky just beginning to show the faintest hint of starlight. As you enter, the change in atmosphere is immediate. The air is thick with the scent of old incense and beeswax from 100,000 candles lit over centuries. It is a sacred smell, a perfume of devotion. The church is not brightly lit. It is a cavern of moving shadows. Clusters of oil lamps and tall beeswax candles burn before the icons, casting a warm, golden glow upwards. The light catches the faces of saints in the vast mosaics that cover the walls and ceilings. Their eyes seem to watch you, their expressions serene and eternal. For a moment, it feels as though you are not merely looking at art, but are standing in the company of heaven itself. This is the midnight office. You take your place. There are no pews, no chairs. You will stand, for hours. You will stand with your brothers, your bodies forming rows in the cavernous, holy dark. And then, the chanting begins. It starts with a single voice, a low, resonant drone from the lead chanter. Then, other voices join, creating a harmony that seems to make the very air vibrate. These are the Psalms of David, the ancient prayers of the Church, sung in Greek. You may not be a scholar, but you know these words by heart. They are etched into your memory through endless repetition. The sound fills the space, echoing from the marble floors to the high, dark dome above. It is a sound that is both sorrowful and hopeful, a deep river of sound carrying the collective prayers of the community. Imagine the strain on your body. Your feet ache, your back is sore. Sleep tugs at the corners of your mind, a tempting whisper, but you fight it. You focus on the words, on the flicker of a candle, on the face of the Pantocrator looking down from the dome. This struggle is part of the path, to deny the body, to elevate the spirit. This is the rhythm of their lives, a constant, gentle struggle against the weakness of the flesh. As the midnight office flows into the service of matins, or orthros, the first hint of dawn begins to appear. A thin, grey light filters through the high, narrow windows of the church. It is a slow, almost imperceptible change. The darkness does not flee, but rather, it softens. The grey turns to a pale, luminous blue. The gold of the mosaics deepens. The faces of your brothers, previously hidden in shadow, become clearer. You see their beards, their tired eyes, their focused expressions. The service concludes, but the day's work has not truly begun. There is a brief period after the prayers. Some monks return to their cells for a moment of private reflection. Others may read from a book of hours by the growing light. But there is no breakfast. Food is a necessity to be dealt with later, not a pleasure to begin the day. Your own path this morning takes you to the Not all monks were scribes, but for those who were, this was their sacred labor. Imagine a long room, perhaps on the second floor of a building, to catch the best light. It is quiet, but not silent. Here, the rule of silence is absolute. It is a functional silence, a respectful silence. You take your place at a heavy wooden desk, angled to catch the morning light from the window. Before you is your work, a large, unbound sheet of vellum. It is creamy, smooth, and expensive. It is calfskin painstakingly prepared, scraped, and smoothed until it is a worthy surface for the word of God. To your side are your tools. A pot of black ink, made from oak galls and iron salts. Another small pot of red ink, 4 titles, and the first letter of a new paragraph. You have your quills, cut from goose feathers, which you must constantly trim and sharpen with a small knife. Your task is to copy a gospel. The master copy, old and fragile, rests on a stand beside you. Your work is not to innovate, not to interpret, but to replicate, perfectly. Each letter must be formed with care, with precision. The uncial script is deliberate, with rounded, clear letters. You dip your quill, wipe the excess, and press it to the vellum. There is a faint, dry scratching sound as you form the Greek letters. It is the only sound you will make for hours. This is not simply writing. It is a form of prayer. With each word you copy, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. You are meditating on its meaning. Your entire being is focused on this single, sacred task. But the body still makes its demands. The light from the window can be harsh, creating a glare on the vellum. Your eyes strain. Your back, bent over the desk, begins to ache. The muscles in your hand cramp from holding the quill. A moment's lapse in concentration, a stray thought, could lead to a mistake. A blot of ink could ruin a day's work, could spoil the expensive vellum. The pressure is immense, yet it must be borne with a calm spirit. Around you, your brothers are engaged in the same silent, focused labor. The air is still. You can smell the faint, metallic scent of the ink, the animal scent of the vellum, and the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. The only movement is the slow, deliberate scratch of quills, a quiet chorus of devotion. Some monks may be illuminators, working not with words, but with images. With a finer brush, they apply gold leaf and vibrant pigments, painting intricate borders of vines and flowers, or creating small jewel-like portraits of the saints within the text. Their work transforms the book from a mere text into a sacred object, a thing of beauty dedicated to God. Hours pass in this manner. The sun climbs higher in the sky. The shadows in the room shorten. Your stomach is empty, a dull ache that you have learned to ignore. Finally, another signal, perhaps a specific pattern on the semantron, or a bell, announces that it is time for the midday meal. You carefully clean your quill, cap your inkpots, and rise from your desk. Your back is stiff, and you stretch carefully. You join the silent procession of your brothers, leaving the Scriptorium and heading towards the refectory. Imagine a long, vaulted hall, similar in shape to the church, with long wooden tables and benches. The walls here are not covered in mosaic, but they might depict the Last Supper or the lives of saints known for their asceticism. It is a reminder that even this act of eating is a spiritual exercise. You take your place. A lay brother or a monk whose turn it is to serve places a simple meal before you. There is no meat. The meal is likely a thick lentil soup, a piece of hard, dark bread, and perhaps some olives or a handful of beans. A clay mug of water, perhaps mixed with a little watered-down wine, is there to wash it down. The smell is plain, earthy. As you begin to eat, the silence is broken by a single voice. A designated monk stands at a lectern, or pulpit, and reads aloud from the writings of the Church Fathers. The words of Saint Basil the Great or Saint John Chrysostom fill the heart. You eat slowly, mechanically, your attention focused not on the food, but on the sacred text being read. The meal is for sustenance, not for pleasure. It is a refueling of the body so that the spirit's work may continue. Conversation is forbidden. The only sound is the reader's voice, the clinking of spoons against clay bowls, and the chewing of bread. After the meal, there is no time for rest. The afternoon is for manual labor. The monastery is a self-sufficient community, a small, walled town that must provide for itself. Not all monks are scribes or chanters. Many are laborers, and even the scholars must take their turn. You might be assigned to the vegetable garden. Imagine the feeling of the sun on your back, a warmth that feels strange after the cool shadows of the church, and you work the dark, rich earth with a hoe, tending to the rows of leeks, onions, and cabbages. The smell is of damp soil, of green and growing things. The work is rhythmic, repetitive, the pulling of weeds, the turning of soil. It is a different kind of meditation. Your mind, which was so focused on the intricate shapes of letters, is now free to wander, to pray, to simply be. Or perhaps you are assigned to the bakery, the air thick with the heat of the ovens and the comforting smell of baking bread. Or the olive press, the rhythmic work of turning the great stone wheel. Or you might be mending tools, or weaving cloth for robes. Every task, no matter how humble, is seen as an act of service to God and to the community. It is a way of practicing humility, of recognizing the value in all forms of work. The rhythm of their lives is not just in prayer, but in the swing of an axe, the kneading of dough, the stitching of a seam. As the afternoon wears on, the sun begins its descent. The heat of the day softens. The shadows lengthen once more. The sound of the semantron calls again, this time for Vespers, the evening service. You wash the dirt from your hands and face and proceed back to the cathedral. The atmosphere inside has changed again. The setting sun streams through the western windows, filling the space with a warm, orange, and melancholic light. The mosaics that were golden in the morning are now fiery. The evening service is more intimate, more contemplative than the mornings. There is a sense of the day's work being done, of offering it all up to God. The chants are softer. The prayers focused on giving thanks and asking for protection through the coming night. After Vespers, there might be another small, simple meal. Or, for some, nothing at all, until the next day. Then, as dusk settles into true night, there is the final service of the day. It is a short service, a final commendation of the soul to God before sleep. It is the closing of the day's great circle of prayer and work. After Compline, the great silence begins. From this moment until the morning service after sunrise, no monk is to speak a word unless in the gravest emergency. The gates of the monastery are locked. The world is shut out completely. You walk back to your cell under a canopy of brilliant stars, a sight you have come to know intimately. The profound silence has returned, deeper now than it was in the morning. You enter your cell, the same cold, sparse room. You say your final private prayers before your icon, and then you lie down on your straw pallet. Your body is exhausted, a deep, bone-weary fatigue from a day that began long before the sun rose. Your mind is full of the day's rhythms, the chants, the scratching of the quill, the feel of the earth. You close your eyes, not in the soft comfort that we know, but in the hard-won rest of a servant. You are a single, small part of a great, ancient, and enduring machine of fate. And as you drift into the darkness of sleep, you know that in just a few short hours, the sound of the semantron will come again, calling you to live the exact same day, all over again. The monastery we just left was a world designed to be timeless, an island of prayerful repetition, deliberately walled off from the currents of history. But no wall, no matter how thick, can hold back the tide of human ambition forever. No vow of silence can drown out the roar of a cannon. Now, I want you to let your mind drift away from the quiet cloister and journey with us to the city that those monks prayed for every single day. The Queen of Cities, Constantinople. Imagine the city in the spring of the year 1453. It is not the vibrant, teeming powerhouse it once was. The empire has been shrinking for centuries, nibbled away by enemies on all sides. The city itself, designed to hold 1 million souls, is now home to perhaps 50,000. There are fields and ruins within its legendary walls. It is a city of ghosts, echoing with the memory of its own glorious past. Yet, it is still Constantinople, the jewel of the bow. Its great church, the Hagia Sophia, still stands as the pinnacle of Christian architecture. Its dome so vast it was said to be suspended from heaven by a golden chain. The immense Theodosian Walls, a triple line of fortifications stretching for miles, have repelled every invader for over 1,000 years. To the people within, they must have seemed less like structures of stone and mortar, and more like a fact of nature, a promise from God himself. But outside those walls, a new world is taking shape, and it is filled with a new and powerful ambition. Imagine a young man, only 21 years old, but with eyes that hold an ancient fire. He is the Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II. He is brilliant, ruthless, and has been obsessed with this city since he was a child. To him, it is not just a strategic prize. It is the red apple, the ultimate symbol of world power. To capture it would be to secure his name in history for all time. And he has come prepared. Imagine the sight from the city ramparts. The fields outside the walls, once empty, are now covered by a vast sea of tents. An army of perhaps 80,000 men-led janissaries, zealous volunteers, and skilled engineers has gathered. And with them, they have brought a monster. A Hungarian engineer named Urban had first offered his services to the Byzantines. They were too poor to pay his price, so he went to Mehmed, who paid him lavishly. And Urban built him the largest cannon the world had ever seen, the Basilic, or Urban's Bombard. Imagine a tube of bronze, 27 feet long, so vast that a man could crawl inside. It could fire a stone ball weighing 1,200 pounds over a mile. It took 60 oxen and hundreds of men just to move it. It was not just a weapon. It was a statement of intent, a declaration that the old rules and the old walls no longer mattered. Inside the city, there's a different kind of energy, a quiet, desperate resolve. At its head is the last emperor, Constantine XI. He is a tragic figure, burdened by the name of the city's founder and the weight of 11 centuries of Roman history. He knows his situation is hopeless without help from the West, help that is slow to come and tangled in theological disputes. He has only about 7,000 defenders, 2 man-miles of walls. Imagine the emperor, walking the ramparts. He is no longer surrounded by the elaborate ceremony of the Byzantine court. He is an inspector of fortifications, a captain of men. He wears no crown, just the simple garb of a soldier. He speaks to his men, a mixture of his own Greek subjects and a few hundred loyal Genoese and Venetian mercenaries, encouraging them, sharing in their work. There is a sense of shared fate, of men standing together at the end of their world. The siege begins in early April, and it begins with a sound. The great cannon is fired. Imagine the earth-shaking roar. A cloud of acrid black smoke fills the air, and then the sound of the massive stone ball, traveling through the air with a terrifying whistle, before it strikes the ancient walls. The impact is like a thunderclap. Stone that has stood since the 5th century shatters and crumbles. And then, another shot, and another. This becomes the new rhythm of the city, a constant, percussive, nerve-shredding bombardment. During the day, the cannons pound the walls. At night, under the faint light of torches, the people of the city, men, women, monks, and priests swarm to the breaches. They work tirelessly, using barrels of earth, wooden stockades, and rubble to patch the holes, to give the walls one more day of life. Inside the city, life becomes a strange mixture of terror and faith. The markets are bare. Food is scarce. The water in the cisterns is precious. But the churches are full. Processions weave through the streets, carrying the most sacred icons, begging the city's protector for a miracle. The air is filled with the scent of incense and the sound of desperate chants, a sound that now has to compete with the constant dull roar of the enemy cannons. For weeks, the city holds. The defenders, though vastly outnumbered, fight with incredible courage at the breaches. The Ottoman fleet tries to force its way into the city's natural harbor. The Golden Horn, but it is blocked by a massive iron chain that the Byzantines have stretched across the water's surface. For a moment, it seems the city might just survive, that the old defenses and the old faith might be enough. And then, the Sultan does the impossible. Imagine yourself as a fisherman, asleep in your small boat in the Golden Horn. You are woken in the pre-dawn hours by a strange sound, a sound of groaning wood, of shouting men, and of oxen. You look towards the hills of Galata north of the harbor, and in the moonlight, you see something that your mind can barely process. You see ships, dozens of them, not in the water, but on the land. Mehmed, frustrated by the chain, has ordered his men to build a road of greased logs over the hills, and now his army is physically dragging his fleet, sail by sail, over the land and down into the waters of the Golden Horn, completely bypassing the chain. The sight is surreal, nightmarish. It is a feat of logistics and will that is both terrifying and magnificent. And for the defenders of Constantinople, it is the death of hope. The city is now surrounded, its soft underbelly exposed. The days that follow are filled with a growing sense of doom. The bombardment intensifies. The breaches in the land walls are wider now, harder to repair. The defenders are exhausted, their numbers dwindling with each skirmish. Constantine receives Mehmed's final offer of surrender. He can leave the city with his people and his possessions. He sends back his reply. To surrender the city to you is not for me to decide, nor for any of its citizens, for we have all decided to die of our own free will, and we will not spare our lives. The final assault is set for the 29th of May. Imagine the evening of the 28th. A strange, luminous fog settles over the city, a phenomenon that many take as a dark omen. They believe the Holy Spirit is abandoning the city. Constantine, knowing the end is near, orders that a final Christian service be held in the Hagia Sophia. And for one last time, the great church is filled. Orthodox Greeks and Catholic Latins, who had been divided by centuries of bitter theological dispute, now stand together, shoulder to shoulder. The emperor is there. The Venetian and Genoese soldiers are there. The ordinary people of the city are there. The patriarch performs the liturgy. The hauntingly beautiful chants of the choir fill the vast space, their voices rising to the great dome. In that moment, under the gaze of the golden mosaics, they are not Greeks or Latin. They are simply Christians, taking communion together at the end of the world. It is a moment of profound, heartbreaking unity. After the service, the emperor speaks to his commanders for the last time. He begs them to remember they are fighting for their faith, their country, their families. And then he walks back to the walls, to take his place, and await the dawn. The assault begins before sunrise. The sound is overwhelming. The roar of thousands of voices shouting for battle. The thunder of the cannons, the blare of trumpets, the beating of drums. The first waves of attackers, irregular troops, are thrown at the walls and are then come the disciplined Anatolian troops, who fight their way to the top of the makeshift stockades before being thrown back. 4 hours. The exhausted defenders hold, but the pressure is relentless. Mehmed then unleashes his elite troops. They are fresh, disciplined, and they advance in a steady, unstoppable wave. The critical moment comes at a small, little-used gate in the wall. The Kerkerporta. It had been left unbolted by accident. A group of Janissaries find it, slip through, and climb the nearby tower, planting the Ottoman standard. At the same time, a cannon shot scores a direct hit on the main stockade, opening a massive breach. The great Genoese commander, Giovanni Giustiniani, is grievously wounded, and his evacuation from the walls causes a panic among his men. Suddenly, the defenders' line wavers. It breaks. The Janissaries pour through the breach. The fight is now in the streets. The Emperor, Constantine, was last seen near the breach. He reportedly cast off his purple imperial boots, the symbol of his station, so that he would not be distinguished from his men. He drew his sword and charged into the sea of oncoming invaders, to die as a soldier with his empire. His body was never definitively found. He was simply consumed by the fall of his city. What followed was the grim promise Mehmed had made to his troops. 3 days of plunder. We do not need to dwell on the specific horrors. It is enough to understand the consequences. Lives were brutally cut short. The order of the world was shattered. Great libraries were lost, their ancient knowledge scattered or destroyed. The accumulated wealth of 1,000 years was packed up and carried away. The great city, the queen of cities, fell into a traumatized silence, broken only by the sounds of weeping and the commands of the conquerors. On the afternoon of the first day, Sultan Mehmed II made his triumphal entry. Imagine him riding on his white horse through the shattered gates, through the streets still filled with the aftermath of the assault. He is not jubilant. Witnesses describe him as somber, almost melancholic. He is awed by the scale of what he has conquered and what has been destroyed. He rides to the heart of the city, to the Hagia Sophia. He dismounts, enters the great church, and sees the damage done by his troops. He reportedly strikes one soldier who is attempting to smash the marble pavement. He wants the building preserved. He bends down, takes a handful of earth, and sprinkles it over his turban, a gesture of humility before his God. Then, he climbs to the pulpit, and an imam ascends with him to proclaim the Muslim creed. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, a new sound echoes under the great dome where Christian chants had once resided. It is the sound of the Adhan, the Islamic call to prayer. In that moment, Constantinople became the Roman Empire was well and truly over. The fall of the city was not just an end. It was also a beginning. Byzantine scholars, fleeing the city with what books they could carry, made their way to Italy and the West. The Greek manuscripts they brought, the knowledge they preserved, helped to ignite the flames of the Renaissance. The world we know today was, in part, born from the ashes of the world that died on that May morning. But for now, just let your mind rest on that image. The image of a city that was once the center of the world, now fallen silent. Its great walls, finally breached. Its emperor, lost to history. And a new sound, a new faith, echoing in its most sacred space. A profound and final change in the rhythm of history. We have felt the quiet rhythm of a monastery, a world centered on prayer and devotion. We have stood on the walls of Constantinople and witnessed the final, violent end of that world. And in both places, we saw the silent power of the icon. The monk in his cell, the emperor in his church, the people in their last procession, all drew strength from these painted faces. But what if those faces were a lie? What if they were not windows to heaven, but barriers? What if these objects of devotion were, in fact, an insult to the very God they were meant to honor? This was not a trivial question. It was a question that would plunge the Byzantine Empire into more than a century of internal conflict. A bitter struggle that pitted emperor against patriarch, soldier against monk, and neighbor against neighbor. It was a war waged, not with swords, but with plaster and paint. A war over the very soul of images. Let us turn back the clock, long before the final fall of the city. Let us go to the 8th century. Imagine the world of an ordinary Byzantine citizen. It is a world saturated with holy images. Icons are everywhere. In the majestic, soaring interiors of the churches, the saints gaze down from shimmering gold mosaics. In your own home, a small, treasured icon of your family's patron saint hangs in a corner, a lamp burning quietly before it. The emperor carries icons into battle, believing they grant divine protection. They are not merely decorations. They are points of contact with the sacred. You don't just look at an icon, you feel its presence. The honor you show to the image, you believe passes directly to the holy person it depicts. It is a fundamental part of life, as natural as breathing. And then, an emperor comes to the throne who sees things differently. His name is Leo III. He is a strong, effective military leader from the eastern provinces of the empire. And in those eastern lands, he has lived alongside different faiths. Islam, uncompromising view on religious art. They believed the second commandment was absolute. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Leo and a growing number of clergy and officials begin to look upon their own empire with uneasy eyes. They see people kissing the icons, prostrating themselves before them, even scraping off bits of their paint to mix with communion wine. To them, the line between veneration and outright idolatry has become dangerously blurred. Their theological argument was serious and profound. God, they reasoned, is infinite, eternal, and purely spiritual. How can you possibly represent the divine using crude, dead matter like wood and pigment? To even try is an act of supreme arrogance. And what of Christ? To paint him, they argued, you must either paint only his human form, thus denying his divinity, which is a heresy, or you must attempt to paint his divine nature along with his human one, which is impossible and blasphemous. They looked at the recent hardships of the empire, but the anger of God, a divine punishment for the sin of idolatry. The first act takes place in the year 726. Imagine the chalked gate, the great bronze entrance to the imperial palace in Constantinople. Above it hangs a large, famous icon of Christ. It is a symbol of imperial and divine protection over the city. Emperor Leo orders his soldiers to take it down. Imagine the scene. A soldier climbs a ladder, an axe in his hand. The crowd gathers below. They are confused, then horrified. They are not theologians debating abstract points. They are people watching a sacred protector, a familiar face of their faith, about to be a group of devout women, overwhelmed with fury and piety, rush forward. They pull the ladder down, and the soldier falls to his death. The event is a shock. It reveals the deep, emotional chasm that has opened in the empire. The iconodules, the servants of images, see them as heretics, robbing the people of their connection to God. What followed this first act was a quiet, systematic, and sorrowful stripping away. The emperor issues an edict. Across the empire, officials enter churches. We don't need to imagine violence and smashing. Imagine something quieter, more chilling. Imagine the methodical work of masons and plasterers. A church that was once a jewel box of color, its walls alive with the stories of the Gospels, is now slowly covered over. The shimmering gold mosaics of Christ and the Theotokos are carefully chipped away, piece by tiny piece, leaving behind a blank, empty space. Frescoes of saints are covered with a stark layer of whitewash. All the vibrant, human-centered art is replaced by simple, abstract symbols. Usually, a plain cross or decorative patterns of birds and flowers, with no religious meaning. A world of faces becomes a world of patterns. The saints are banished. The silence in the churches becomes a different kind of silence, one of absence. The monasteries, which were the primary producers of icons and the fiercest defenders of their use, become targets of persecution. Monks are forced to renounce their vows. Their communities are scattered, their property confiscated by the state. The struggle over images becomes a struggle for power. But the defenders of icons did not fall silent. From his safe refuge in a monastery in Muslim-controlled territory, a brilliant theologian named John of Damascus formulated the counter-argument that would eventually win the day. Imagine him in his study, surrounded by scrolls. He is not writing with anger, but with careful, prayerful logic. He argues that the iconoclasts have missed the most important event in history, the Incarnation. God, in his infinite love, chose to become flesh and blood in the person of Jesus Christ. He chose to enter the material world. This act, John argued, sanctified matter itself. It made it worthy to be used in the depiction of the divine. He then made a crucial distinction, one that calmed the fears of idolatry. He distinguished between proskynesis, the veneration and respect you show to a holy person or object, and latreia, the absolute worship that is owed to God alone. You do not worship the wood and the paint, he explained. You venerate the image, and that honor passes through the image to the one it represents. Just as the respect you show to an emperor's statue, passus, the icon, he wrote, is a book for the illiterate, a silent sermon that teaches the faith to those who cannot read. This deep theological debate raged for decades. Emperors came and went. Some were staunch, others were more lenient. The policy shifted back and forth, creating a climate of uncertainty and fear. The unity of the empire was fractured over this single, fundamental question of how to see God. The beginning of the end of this struggle came, as so often in Byzantine history, through the power of an empress. Her name was Irene. After her husband, an iconoclast emperor, died, she became regent for her young son. Irene had secretly been an iconodule her whole life. She carefully maneuvered, replacing hostile officials, and in the year 787, she convened a great church council. Bishops from all over the Christian world gathered in the city of Nicaea. They studied the writings of John of Damascus and the church fathers, and they formally condemned iconoclasm, restoring the veneration of icons. But the struggle was not quite over. There would be another wave of official iconoclasm in the following decades. It was not until the year 843 that the controversy was settled for good, and again, by an empress. Her name was Theodora, and like Irene before her, she became regent for her young son. After her iconoclast husband died, she moved swiftly. A new church council was held in Constantinople. The decisions of the past were Iconoclasm was declared a heresy, once and for all. And to celebrate, Theodora organized a great procession. Imagine that day. It is the first Sunday of Lent. For the first time in generations, the people of Constantinople witness a triumphant return. The doors of the churches are thrown open. Monks and priests, who had been hiding their precious icons, or had practiced their faith in secret, now emerge into the light. They walk through the streets of the city, holding the icons aloft. The faces of Christ, of Mary, of the saints and martyrs, are seen once more by the people. Imagine the emotion of that moment. The sounds of weeping, of cheers, of prayers, of thanksgiving. It is more than just the return of art. It is the return of a lost language of faith. It is the restoration of the soul of their city. This celebration was so profound that it is still commemorated every year in the Eastern Orthodox Church as the triumph of orthodoxy. The iconoclast controversy was over, but it left a permanent mark. It forced the Church to think deeply about the nature of religious art, and in doing so, it codified the style we now recognize as Byzantine. The icons that were made after this period were not meant to be realistic portraits. They were intentionally otherworldly. The flat perspectives, the elongated figures, the serene and sorrowful eyes, the golden backgrounds that signify the light of heaven. All of this was meant to reinforce the idea that the icon is not a picture of this world, but a window into the next. Let your mind rest on that thought. The power held within a simple image. A power so great that an empire tore itself in two over its meaning. A power so cherished that its return was celebrated as a victory for faith itself. It reminds us that for much of human history, art was never just for decoration. It was a conversation with the divine. We have explored the soul of Byzantium through its conflicts and its faith. We have seen how an image, a simple painting on wood, could be considered a doorway to the divine. Now, we will visit a world that was, in its own way, a kind of living icon. A place where human beings attempted to replicate the order and majesty of heaven, right here on earth. We are leaving the world of theological debate and entering the great palace of Constantinople. Let go of the image of a single, cohesive building. The great palace was a sprawling labyrinth, a city within a city, covering a vast area but above. It was a complex of reception halls, private apartments, barracks, chapels, and lush, manicured gardens where fountains whispered and peacocks strolled. It was a world sealed off from the noise and grime of the city outside. A world dedicated to a single purpose: the performance of power. At the center of this world was the emperor. We must understand that a Byzantine emperor was not simply a king or a ruler. He was seen as God's chosen regent on earth, the vicegerent of Christ. He was the vital link between the heavenly kingdom and the worldly empire. As such, his life was not his own. It was a constant, unending public ceremony. Every gesture, every word, every step he took was choreographed, imbued with a deep symbolic meaning. He was not a man. He was a living icon of imperial authority. To understand this, let us imagine we are foreign ambassadors, arriving from the barbarian West for an audience with the emperor in the 9th or 10th century. Our journey into the heart of power is a carefully managed experience, designed to awe, intimidate, and humble us. We are led from the city streets into the palace complex. The noise of the outside world vanishes, replaced by a profound and unnerving silence. We are guided through a series of courtyards and anterooms, each one more opulent than the last. The walls shimmer with mosaics depicting glorious military victories and serene religious scenes. The air is heavy with the scent of expensive incense, a scent we have come to associate with churches, but here it signals a different kind of holiness, the sanctity of the state. We are surrounded by court officials. Many are eunuchs, chosen for their loyalty, as they could have no dynastic ambitions of their own. They are clad in exquisite robes of pure white or richly colored silk. They do not speak to us. They do not even seem to look at us. They stand motionless, like statues, their presence a silent testament to the rigid, unbreachable order of this place. The walk is long. The silence is heavy. With every step, our own sense of importance shrinks. Finally, we are brought to the doors of the great audience hall. The doors swing open, and we are met with a sight designed to overwhelm the senses. The hall is vast. Light reflects from every surface, and at the far end, we see the emperor. He is seated on his throne. But this is no ordinary throne. It is the legendary throne of Solomon, a marvel of mechanical engineering. It is crafted of pure gold and precious gems. Flanking it are two life-sized lions, also made of gold. In a golden tree beside the throne sit golden birds of various sizes. As we are led forward, a hidden organ begins to play a soft, otherworldly music. Then, the golden lions open their mouths and emit a deafening roar, their tails beating against the floor. The golden birds in the tree begin to flap their wings and sing, each with a distinct, manufactured birdsong. The effect is utterly disorienting. Is it magic? Is it divine power? We have no way of knowing. We are instructed to perform the This is not a bow or a curtsy. We must fall to the floor, our faces pressed against the cold marble, our bodies fully prostrate before the emperor. We lie there, in the dust, for what feels like an eternity. Finally, a court official gives the signal to rise. We lift our heads, blinking in the light, and we are met with another shock. The emperor is gone. We look up, and there he is. The entire throne has been silently and mechanically hoisted high into the air, almost to the ceiling. And while we were on the floor, his garments have been changed. He now wears robes of even greater splendor, shimmering and divine. The man who was on our level a moment ago now floats above us, a celestial being looking down from on high. The message is clear and unspoken. This is not a man you are dealing with. This is something far greater. This entire performance is a carefully calibrated piece of theater. It is political psychology at its most sophisticated, designed to leave a foreign visitor with an unshakable impression of the emperor's wealth, technological superiority, and divine favor. Every detail of the court was governed by this same obsession with ceremony and status. Consider the imperial wardrobe. Silk was the fabric of power, its production a state secret for centuries. But one color was above all others. A deep, rich, Tyrian purple was created from the glands of thousands of tiny sea snails. The process was incredibly laborious and expensive, and the color was reserved by law exclusively for the emperor. He was the Porphyrogenitus, born in the purple. To wear this color without permission was an act of treason, punishable by death. The emperor's robes, heavy with his purple silk, pearls, and gemstones, were not just clothing. They were a sacred uniform, setting him apart from all mortal men. This constant ritual extended to every corner of the emperor's life. Unlike the monk in his cell, who chose a life of rigid routine to discipline his own soul, the emperor lived in a gilded cage, his every action dictated by centuries of tradition. His waking, his dressing, his meals, his prayers, all were public performances witnessed and assisted by a host of officials. When he ate, specific hymns were sung. When he walked, his steps were measured. He lived and breathed a liturgy of power. It is a strange and powerful contrast. The monk in his cold, stone cell, seeking humility and closeness to God through silence and simplicity. And the emperor on his golden flying throne, demonstrating his closeness to God through overwhelming splendor and an unbreachable wall of ceremony. Both were seeking to live out a Byzantine ideal. Both were living lives of immense discipline. And both were, in their own way, profoundly isolated. The purpose of all this pomp was not mere vanity. It was the bedrock of the state. In a world of constant intrigue and political instability, the unchanging, eternal ritual of the court was a source of stability. It projected an image of the empire as something timeless, ordained by God, as predictable as the rising of the sun. The ceremony was the empire. And as long as the performance continued, Byzantium, the new Rome, endured. And so, our journey through the world of Byzantium comes to a close. Let your mind drift back, like a feather on the water, over the places we have been tonight. We have felt the cold pre-dawn air in a monk's cell, and heard the quiet scratch of a quill in the Scriptorium. We have lived a life measured by the sound of the semantron, a rhythm of prayer and work. We have stood on the 1,000-year-old walls of a great city, and felt the earth tremble with the impact of cannons. We have witnessed the tragic, final moments of an empire, and heard the echoes of its fall. We have stepped into the quiet of a whitewashed church, and contemplated the power of an image, a power so profound, it could tear a civilization apart, and in its return, bring it back together. And we have walked the silent, intimidating halls of a golden palace, and stood before a throne that could fly, witnessing a ceremony designed to make a man into a living icon. The monk in his cell, the soldier on the wall, the theologian in his study, the emperor on his throne. 4 different worlds, 4 different rhythms, all contained within the long, complex, and captivating story of the Byzantine Empire. Their world of stone and incense, of silk and steel, now feels very far away. And as these stories fade, become aware of your own world. The comfort of the room you are in, the softness of the bed you are lying on. You do not lie on a straw pallet. Your walls are not being battered by cannons. You are not a prisoner of a golden cage. There is only the quiet of this moment, the gentle rise and fall of your own breath. The voices of the past have said all they need to say for tonight. The echoes of Byzantium can now fade completely, leaving behind only peace and stillness. There are no more stories to follow. There is nothing left for you to do. Your only task now is to let go, to let the weight of the day fall away, and drift into the quiet, welcoming darkness of a deep and restorative sleep. Rest now. Sleep well.